You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this. You know, last week or so, I was talking about urine, which I know was really exciting for everybody. And I briefly mentioned mitochondria because the mitochondria in your cells is where respiration happens, and respiration is responsible. It is powerhouse of the cell, but it's also, like I said, responsible for some of the water in your urine as a byproduct of that. So I touched on that because I knew that this week I wanted to talk specifically about mitochondria as my topic. Mitochondria are amazing and fascinating. I think a lot of us learned and then forgot about mitochondria, like in about somewhere around ninth grade in like a life science class, right?
For most people, I think.
There you go. It did become a meme a few years ago, and it was mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. That's it.
And it's true. You know, I think we probably learned other parts of the cell, like the nucleus and the ever fun to say endoplasmic reticulum, my favorite part.
Ribosomes.
But I don't think, I think because of how it's presented in schools, like it just becomes boring and you gloss over it and don't understand how amazing the mitochondria really are. So let's do a deep dive here, okay? You'll often hear mitochondria referred to as an organelle, which drives me crazy because authors just move right on past that word like it's a word we use every day. And once they say that, you're supposed to be like, oh yeah, an organelle, of course. Mm-hmm. Normal people don't know what that is, okay? So let's go over what that is really quick. An organelle is just a fancy word for a subcellular structure that performs a task in the body. So think about organs as macro structures that perform tasks, like pumping your blood. You can think of organelles as like mini organs inside a cell that make it do what it does. Okay. So that's an organelle.
Yeah, that was always my understanding of it.
Perfect. You're ahead of the class.
Well, I was a bio major, so I have a leg up there.
Yeah, same
There's something
here.
beyond the ninth grade understanding most of us did. So mitochondria is one of those systems. So right there, now we know that mitochondria is a structure in our cells, and it does a job. And the job it does is super important. Like Rachel was saying, it's the powerhouse of the cell. It makes chemical energy. And so the chemical energy they make is called ATP. The actual process I'm not going to go into because it's super complicated and it's all kinds of chemistry. But
Kirk,
I touched on the basics of it last week.
Yeah.
To school.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into the chemistry, okay? What I touched on last week is that it is the process of taking sugars and breaking them down into carbon dioxide and water, and you're getting energy out of that chemical process. So it does take oxygen to do this, and the process is called respiration. Really cool side note for everybody. If you put your hand, I like to put it on the back of my neck. It's kind of one of the best spots to feel the heat in your body. When you feel that heat, that is basically a byproduct of this process. It's keeping our bodies warm. And when you're feeling that heat, that is literally stored heat from the sun that has been converted into sugars by plants, and then we eat them and our bodies convert that back to heat. So you're feeling the heat of the sun when you feel the heat on your body.
Huh.
Wow.
Which is so cool. It's like one of my favorite things. Really the heat in our body is really just the heat from the sun.
So
it all
we're
comes
solar
back to the
powered
sun.
Is what you're saying.
We are. We're absolutely solar powered. Yeah.
As are most creatures on Earth, although not the ones at the deep sea vents, as we learned.
And maybe we're getting there. So mitochondria are found in almost every cell of our body. And here's one of the first weird things about them. The one cells where they're not found is in male sperm cells. So pretty much like all cells in the human body are diploid cells, meaning they have 2 copies of chromosomes. You get 1 set from your mom and 1 set from your dad. Sex cells are different, like eggs and sperm. They're haploid, meaning they only have 1 set of unpaired chromosomes. The X chromosome is considered the female chromosome, and the Y is the male. Now, because there's no mitochondria in sperm cells, you have the same mitochondria as your mom, and they are different than what your dad has. You don't share your mitochondria with your dad at all.
Huh.
Now, with what I just told you, you would be forgiven for then assuming that the DNA for mitochondria is on the X chromosome because you get it from your mom.
No.
But this is wrong, and it's so cool, the reason why. So mitochondrial DNA is completely separate from human DNA.
Isn't
or
there...
what you would maybe call nuclear DNA instead of human DNA. But I prefer calling it human DNA and mitochondrial DNA for very important reasons, because they really are separate things.
I think I know where you're going with this, and I don't want to spoil it for everybody. So
yeah, I think you might.
Perfect.
I think I might know too.
I think you know as well. So you only get your mitochondrial DNA from your mother. It is in the egg, and it is completely separate from the rest of the DNA that makes you you. And I think the first time I became aware of this was when I heard about the famous cloned sheep Dolly.
Oh, yeah.
You guys remember Dolly?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Dolly was the first like big organism to be like cloned. Turns out, though, she was not an exact clone. They took DNA from one sheep, and then took an egg from another sheep, and they took all the DNA out of that sheep, so it was just basically like an empty egg. And they injected this DNA in there. I'm grossly simplifying. And basically a new resulting sheep was born that was exactly the same as the original they had taken the DNA from, except
they forgot
the mitochondria. The mitochondria was not the same as Dolly's, do you call it a parent? I'm not quite sure.
Progenitor?
There it
progenitor, thank you. It had the mitochondria of the donor sheep, not the sort of original sheep. So why on earth would this be? Well, the DNA of our mitochondria is completely separate from all the other DNA in our body. And the answer to why this is so is because technically we are a chimera. So the term chimera comes from Greek mythology. A chimera was a fire-breathing monster with a lion's head, a goat's body, and a serpent's tail. Now, I am not implying that we have any of those things. All right?
But I wanted a lion's head and wings.
I know. It's just, only in your dreams. So a chimera, though, is a hybrid between 2 different species. Humans are a chimera, but the reason we don't think about it that way is that so is pretty much every other living animal on Earth. So here's what we think happened. It turns out that mitochondria are awfully similar to aerobic prokaryotes that we can still find in the wild today. And I know I just threw a bunch of big words out there. Going back to biology class, take a big deep breath. A prokaryote is a single-celled organism. Thank you. Be calm. A single-celled organism that has neither a distinct nucleus nor specialized organelles. And hey, we just learned what organelles are. So bacteria and cyanobacteria are the most commonly cited examples of prokaryotes. So what evolutionary biologists theorized happened long, long ago is that a symbiosis developed between an aerobic prokaryote, basically like a bacteria, and a nucleated cell. So a cell that had some sort of little primitive critter that had a nucleus, like a unicellular critter that had a nucleus. And usually these little critters, picture like an amoeba, for example, would like surround and swallow up some of this bacteria and basically eat it. But in this case, that didn't happen. And so the prokaryote, benefited from being inside a protected, cell. And the aerobic prokaryote had this amazing new ability inside it of something that could create energy, which is what this prokaryote could do, or this early version of the mitochondria. It basically became a win-win symbiosis between this very primitive life form that suddenly swallowed something up and was like, oh, hey, you know what? Instead of digesting this thing, it's giving me energy. That's pretty cool. I'm going to kind of hang on to this. So when those cells divided through asexual reproduction, the nuclear DNA of that single-cell organism was replicated and split in half, but the mitochondria, or the proto-mitochondria at this point, also replicated and split into the new cells as well. So if you can imagine a world back then that was dominated by prokaryotes, basically just like bacterial life on Earth, and then one of them figures out how to live inside of a cell and create a new creature that was capable of so much more, suddenly we have what we call eukaryotic life, and it took off like mad. It was just an explosion. It was super successful, so successful that like all animals that you can think of that are alive today are examples of this eukaryotic life, and they still carry on the tradition of having this little, thing inside of every single one of our cells that gives us the energy we use to be talking on podcasts and walking around and living. So it's such a cool thing that this has been going on for so long. And the mitochondria has its own DNA. It's now completely dependent upon us. We can't take mitochondria out and have it live on its own. But it's basically this cool example of how so long ago these two life forms came together to create something much grander. And we carry it with us to this day in each and every one of our cells. We basically are this chimera of these two species that came together and found a great benefit by being together.
It's such an amazing story. And I don't know if you were going to talk about this or if you were kind of wrapping up, but basically they think the same thing happened with plants.
With like
except with like a single-celled algae type thing that could do photosynthesis instead of respiration, right?
Right. So I mean, this has happened a number of times in the past, and it's how things have become more complex over time, and it kind of like I think we talk about on this podcast a lot, and just in general, is that we like to put things into little boxes when we study them. Nature is a spectrum, and there's so much weirdness out there. It's why we started this podcast.
Truly.
Is to talk about all the bizarre, strange stuff out there, and it seems like strange, relationships and symbioses and whatnot are almost more common than not in nature, because that's the more complex you can become to do things that allow you to outcompete your peers, if you will, allows you to be successful in nature. And so we see really cool things like this. But I think it's cool, it's something we learn about in school and then promptly forget about. And I don't think a lot of schools really teach how amazing it really is that we have like this essentially another species living inside us with completely separate DNA from ours. That just blows my mind.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't learn that until college, and I was teaching it I wasn't quite teaching it then, but I eventually taught all of that. And it's fascinating and just mind-boggling.
Well, I'll tell you what, Rachel, I hope you can get your mind unboggled, because after the break, we're coming back and it's your turn to tell us the story. Kirk here with a quick note. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It helps other lovers of the strange find our show. You can also find and follow us on social media. Search for Strange by Nature Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or come visit us at strangebynaturepodcast.com. We'll see you there. Now, back to the show.
So, welcome back, everyone. Now, I want you to imagine you are hanging out at the bottom of the ocean. Not like the bottom of the ocean, like Mariana's Trench bottom, but just by like a coral reef. And you're a fish.
So like 5 feet?
Right, like 5 feet, right.
Okay.
I feel like you pick a lot of
or
sea
20.
creatures.
I do love the ocean. So you're a fish, and as you're swimming, you get a little bit tired, and you kind of go close to the sandy bottom.
Uh-oh.
I feel like something bad is going to happen now.
It's a trap.
All of a sudden, something long strikes out at you, and like a guillotine, you are now 2.
Oh.
Oh my, I've been bifurcated?
You've been bifurcated.
Yikes.
You are very dead. But what?
That seems reasonable.
But what hit you? What animal is now eating you at this part of the ocean?
I think the answer would depend on how big I am.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Generalized, like, not a big fish. Okay, so
Okay.
what hit you was something called a bobbit worm. Have either of you
Bobbit.
heard of a bobbit worm?
Is it?
I have not.
No, but is it related to John Wayne Bobbitt?
Or Lorena Bobbitt. Is that
It
the-
was named after John and Luanne Bobbitt, yes.
No.
Partially.
Dear Lord.
I already don't like this one. Oh.
It's
Oh
also
dear.
called a
Should we-
sand
Our
striker.
younger
We might
listeners
have
don't
to
know why we're cringing.
Do a little explanation of who those folks are.
Yeah, I didn't do research on Bob or John and Luanne Bobbitt. Do you want to explain?
May I?
Not
May
really.
I?
Victoria.
Go for it,
Okay.
Victoria.
Well, I don't want to go too long here. I could, but sometime in the 90s, I feel like around 91 or 92, this story hit all the papers in the US and all the nightly news outlets because it was so extreme and mind-boggling. Basically, John Wayne and Lorena Bobbitt were married, and John Wayne was an abusive husband. And at one evening, Lorena reached her breaking point, and while John was asleep, took her revenge by taking a knife and slicing off his penis, at which point she went for a drive and tossed it out of the window into a field. The authorities were able to retrieve the penis and surgically reattach it to Mr. Bobbitt, who then went on to have a, I think, relatively short career in the pornography industry.
No pun intended.
Indeed. The pun was intended.
It was intended, though, yeah. Oh, wow. So, yeah, snippy snip. All right, so
Yep.
what do we got going on, Rachel?
So it's also known as the sand striker. Okay. Now, it was
Okay.
found it's been a known animal. It's been around, it was discovered in about 1790. So it's been around for a long, long time.
Wow, okay.
And it's a oh my gosh. It is
Polychaete?
a polychaete bristle worm. Okay. Now,
Okay.
I have a description here, but I sent you both a picture.
Oh boy.
So I want you to
Here
open
we
this
go.
picture,
Pictures.
and
All
I'm
right, we're
going
gonna open it up.
to talk a little bit about this.
No,
Oh.
that's
It's got some pretty colors on it. It's kind of alarming.
that doesn't make up for what it looks like, though.
Oh.
Oh my god, how do I begin to describe this?
So it's got many segments. Its
Mhm.
head is a very complicated looking contraption with sort of three antennae kind of looking things coming out of the same point. So sort of forming
Yep.
like the top part of a cross. And there's striped black and white. And then there's some very iridescent looking little maybe eyes. And then there's flanges sticking out from the head area below that, kind of like ribs almost.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get down and there are a lot of segments all looking rainbowy iridescent in a
Yeah, the rainbow iridescence is really cool. It's not enough to save the overall image. It's sort of like the proverbial lipstick on a pig. This is if this didn't have the rainbow colors on it, this is nightmare fuel. This is something
Yes.
that would, if it was bigger, I'm assuming this is quite small. If this was bigger, I would imagine this being some sort of horror movie devouring people.
I could see that.
It's terrifying.
So I have a few things to tell you. So my description that I came up with was think about an armless mantis shrimp that had lots of antennae. So Victoria,
Okay.
you said that it might have like 2 eyes.
It was a little
They
hard
don't
to tell.
have any eyes.
Oh.
They have no
What?
eyes. It has no eyes, but it has about 5 antennae. They are super, super sensitive. So it's an
Okay,
ambush.
I can see the 5 now, yep.
Yeah. So it's an ambush predator, and it's found on the sandy bottoms of coral reefs or places where it can get lots and lots of prey. And it hunts primarily at night. And it hides its body in a burrow, so only its head is showing, so only its antenna. And its mandible is within its body. They hold their mandible inside of their body, and as soon as a fish comes near, their antenna senses that something is near, it bursts out, and its mandible, the retractable mandibles, have razor sharp spikes fringing the edges of the mandibles, and are strong enough that it can snap some fish in half. Okay.
What's our size reference on this?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm seeing a photo. I know the listeners aren't. To me, if you told me this thing was only an inch long, I'd be like, okay, it seems reasonable. If you told me it was 20 feet long, I would never come within 20 miles of the ocean. What are we talking here, size? When you say a fish, we're talking about a minnow-sized fish, or how big are these?
So, these range in length.
No.
They're about an inch wide. Okay.
Whoa.
They range in length from about 10 centimeters or 4 inches.
Okay, that's pretty long.
And the longest that they've ever found is about 3 meters, also known as about 10 feet long.
No. But hold on.
But like
10 feet long, but still only an inch wide.
Still only an inch wide, yes.
It's not going to be able to snap me in half. Okay.
No.
I'm still going in.
Yeah. So the longest, technically speaking, it was 9.81 feet in length, but still. And
that's amazing.
It's so amazing. When I was doing research, I'm like, wow, this looks really screwy. Gotta do this on the podcast. And then I found out how long it could get, and I'm like, oh, that's a no. So its whole body is covered in a hard exoskeleton, and it ranges in color, ranging from like deep purple to a black with that metallic color kind of speckled in. And this actually lives generally in the Atlantic Ocean, but also in the Indo-Pacific Ocean. Generally around like coral reefs or places where there's more high fish population.
Fish, yeah. It also looks, I just want to point out for those who can't see it at home, I know this is like the segments of its body, but it looks like it's totally ripped. Like, it doesn't have a 6-pack abs. It looks like it has like a 22-pack abs. And I'm assuming if this is the 9-foot version, it's got a like 80,000-pack abs.
Right, absolutely.
And I realize those are not abs; those are segments of its body. But,
that's segments of its exoskeleton.
Kind of look.
Yeah, it's horrifying. And how long do you think this animal would live?
Couple years, maybe. I don't know.
I'm gonna go somewhere less than 30 million.
Well.
I feel like that's conservative.
So its lifespan is anywhere from 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
I will say
order of magnitude.
I was off by several factors. Yeah.
Victoria was closer. And then a random fun fact, and then I'm gonna wrap up here. Some aquariums actually, they're really, really well camouflaged animals, and what they'll do is sometimes they will come in on the coral that gets brought in for their reefs and everything for the exhibits. And sometimes for decades, fish will just randomly go missing, and they won't know what's happening. And eventually, they'll find one of these bobbit worms hanging out, but they didn't know because they're so well camouflaged. They barely ever have more than just their antenna hanging out of their burrow.
Why are they so shiny then?
It's a good question.
I wonder if that's just sort of the in this particular photo, the light is just catching it like that, but you wouldn't see that.
I mean, think about
So it looks like a
how
flash.
colorful a coral reef is. Like, that really lends
That's true too.
to blending in really well.
I used to work at an aquarium that had an artificial reef in it, and we, as far as I know, didn't have these, but we had a similar thing that would happen with moray eels that we did have that would hang out, and once in a while a fish would come too close, they'd be like, yeah, all right, and just take a giant gouge right out of the side.
Those things have terrifying jaws.
Yeah, they do. Well, that's all I've got for you. So we're going to take a little bit of a break. And when we come back, it's going to be Victoria.
All right, we're back. And our final creature of the evening is an animal that has a soft place in my heart because I have a soft place in my heart for animals that have a bad reputation. I'm not going to do any kind of complicated, cute introduction here. I am talking about hyenas.
I'm here for it.
Oh,
they're
boy.
so lovely.
Well, if what you know about hyenas is mostly from The Lion King, which I feel is probably the case for many Americans, you probably have a pretty negative impression.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of myths and confusion about them, but they have a lot of really interesting things. For one thing, they look more like dogs, but they are actually more closely related to cats. There are 4 species, the spotted, striped, and brown hyenas, and there's one called the aardwolf, which actually looks a bit more like a jackal and is a bit more distantly related. But if you think about those Lion King ones, you're thinking about the spotted hyena, Crocuta, which is, it's the most numerous one, and it's the most widespread one in Africa. And that's the one I'm mainly going to be talking about here, because they have some extra weird features.
They sure do.
Kirk obviously knows where I'm going with this.
I am not really sure. I think they're more related to cats, right? You said...
Yeah, they are more related to cats.
Oh,
Yeah.
Rachel, this is going to be...
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Buckle your seatbelt.
So, before we get to the really, really good stuff, I have a few other things to talk about with them, because there's lots of really cool things about hyenas. So... striped and brown hyenas are, in fact, largely scavengers, but this is an inaccurate perception of the spotted hyena. They're mainly predators. In fact, studies show that they hunt as much as lions, and in fact, lions are often the ones stealing hyena kills instead of the other way around.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Another thing that
me.
people know about
Lions.
hyenas is they slink around, which is not exactly true. They kind of look like they have really long legs in front and really tiny legs in back. And in fact, their front legs are a bit longer, but the difference is not so big. And it seems really much greater because they have a long neck and huge, massive, muscular head and shoulders that they use for dragging a prey and tearing it apart. And also their butt is kind of rounded off without angles to keep predators from grabbing them. Which I think is hilarious.
Nice.
That's amazing.
So the shape kind of makes them look like they're cowardly and slinking, but they are in fact endurance runners. So they run down their prey.
Okay.
And they will occasionally tussle with lions. So I wouldn't call that very cowardly either.
That's pretty fierce. Nope. I wouldn't tussle with a lion.
Nor I, if I could possibly help it.
I will also jump in and say, nor I.
Yeah. Those hyenas in The Lion King were pretty stupid, but in fact, hyenas are quite intelligent. And I guess the other main thing that people know about hyenas is that they make crazy laughing sounds, and this is in fact true. They usually do that when they're fighting over food, but they have lots of other noises that they make too. Okay. And they are amazing eaters. If you're into nose to tail eating, hyenas are even better than you because they can eat the entire carcass.
Just say, hold on.
Nose
if you're
to
into
tail.
nose to tail eating, is that like a thing people are into?
Yeah, it's I guess it's kind of a foodie thing where people talk about using the whole animal, not just, the muscle meat, but organ meat and all that stuff.
Okay, I've heard of that.
I was thinking like the hair and like, the
well, technically
the spleen.
speaking, like you want to be as like friendly as possible. You want to use all of the parts that you can.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the
But
idea.
I have never heard of it referred to as nose to tail eating.
Yeah,
That's new.
that's what the cool kids are calling it.
Clearly, Rachel and I are not the cool kids.
Kirk, we were never the cool kids.
I was for like 5 minutes, I think, but no, never was.
Never.
At any rate, hyenas really do eat the whole thing, including crushing up and digesting all the bones. They can
Oh my
extract,
gosh.
Good for them.
they can extract everything except the inorganic bone material. So, in fact, their poop is mostly just a white powder, which is
All right.
Efficient.
pretty crazy.
Yep.
A group of 35 hyenas was once observed to eat an adult zebra in 36 minutes flat. So think
That's-
about what that scene must have looked like.
No.
This is including the bones and hooves and
Wow.
everything.
Wow.
Okay.
I'm impressed.
Hey, a half hour ago there was a zebra over here. Where'd it go? I
A
don't know.
little wet spot on the savannah.
Evaporating.
Oh, man. I don't know. I'm tempted to call the episode Wet Spot on the Savannah, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. So, spotted
We
hyenas.
weren't already there?
Oh, Rachel, no.
Oh no.
Oh, God.
Spotted hyenas are highly social animals, and they have a matriarchal society, which is somewhat unusual for mammals. And
Girl power.
the hyena females are, in fact, significantly bigger, and they weigh like 10 to 15% more than the males, which is very unusual for a mammal. Usually it's the males that are larger in mammaldom. And the females are socially dominant, and they have a very complex society. They actually have a more complex social life than any other carnivore, including wolves. And in fact, they're about as complex as baboon society, which is pretty amazing.
Wow.
Fascinating.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff.
Kirk looks like he's
basically-
about to burst a vessel in his forehead or something.
Oh, man. Just go
You
ahead.
basically cannot tell from looking at their genitalia which one is male and which one is female.
Why would that be, Victoria?
That would be because females have a pseudopenis. Their labia are fused to form a pseudoscrotum with fatty pads. And so they're the only mammal without an external vaginal opening. The pseudopenis is a gigantic clitoris that has a single urogenital canal going down the middle that is a combined vagina and urethra. So this is all to say that the female hyena pees, has sex, and gives birth through her pseudopenis. I'm just going to let that one sink in for a moment.
What do you make of that, Rachel?
I mean, I'm going back to my original comment. Girl power, I suppose. Good
Well,
for them.
It doesn't seem like the best
No,
physical arrangement.
it doesn't.
So we're going to get into some of the
doesn't.
complications here.
Yeah.
Mating is
Like-
very... Oh, go ahead, Rachel.
Well, I mean, it sounds. I don't know. It could get complicated so fast, and everything's coming out of one spot. That would be unsanitary. Just oh man.
I mean, she does poop out of a different hole, let's be clear.
well, that's nice.
It's not a cloaca. Come on.
Well, right. That's a whole other ball of wax and species.
Indeed.
Just go on, Victoria. I'm just gonna sit here and be shocked.
Yep. So mating is very difficult for the males. So during mating,
You don't say.
yeah, the female actually retracts the clitoris, leaving a kind of a skin sheath. And so the pseudopenis is flaccid, and it points down and forward. So the male has to like crouch behind and underneath, kind of thrusting up blindly until he finally gets it in. And one article I saw compared it to trying to mate with like a dangling tube sock.
Oh,
but it does
wow.
mean that forced copulation is impossible. So that's a
That is
plus for the
nice.
females.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
Bonus.
It may in fact
But
be the
also-
one of the evolutionary forces behind the development of this remarkable contraption.
That's
So-
a word for it.
If that sounds difficult for the males, the shoe is on the other foot when it comes time for a female hyena to give birth, because
Kirk is just
Yeah.
nodding
hyenas
along.
hyenas have the largest size of cub relative to the mom's weight of all carnivores at birth. So she has to.
Oh, God.
Horrifying.
I didn't know that little fact. That makes this so much worse.
Yeah, it really does. A
Oh.
Already
2-pound
horrified.
2-pound cub being pushed through this 1-inch wide
Oh,
pseudopenis.
absolutely not. What? No.
So the thing tears open.
Oh, yeah, Rachel, you're horrified.
No.
It tears open. So a significant percentage of first-time hyena mothers do die. I think I read 10%. I couldn't confirm that in a scientific article.
Yep.
Oh.
And up to 60% of all firstborn cubs actually suffocate on the way out because it takes so long. And I guess on
Oh my
subsequent
God.
births, things are like looser or like split open faster or something. So,
There's been more tearing going on, so
Yeah.
yeah.
so
Oh my God.
Rip open here, it
well,
says.
it may
Ah.
sound great to be the matriarch, in charge of the hyena clan. Ladies, you don't want that. You do not.
No.
So it's sort of like,
sounds
no, you know
awful.
what? You go ahead and have the kids this time. I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good.
Whew.
So that happened.
Yeah,
That
that's
was
what I got.
horrifying.
I mean,
That happens.
there is more I could say about hyenas, but I think we're already going long on this episode, so perhaps I shouldn't.
Well, the hyenas part 2.
Would it be fair to say you're just bursting with information about hyenas?
Oh,
boy.
that was terrible, Kirk.
I know. That was a ripping good time.
Oh, God. Oh.
Those poor hyenas.
And let's just leave it there for our dear listeners before we go any further.
Oh my gosh.
Thanks, Victoria.
You
Thank
are
you.
welcome. See you next week, folks.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.